Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live interview with Katelyn Silva. I'm very happy to have Katelyn with us today. And I'm going to read for you what Katelyn's intro is, if I can find it. I'm a little bit frazzled. Sorry about that. Katelyn Silva is the author of 11 books, some under a pen name, and a 4 times bestseller. She's a God fearing mother who has overcome significant life challenges, and she's the founder of We Write Books. She works with Christian mompreneurs to get clarity on their book idea and confidently write and publish a bestseller, and to use it as a business tool so that they can create impact, authority, and legacy throughout their book. So, Katelyn, welcome here. We're very excited to have you and learn more from you. Um, so, in the interim, I'm just going to ask, who is Katelyn? What do you do, and how do you provide value?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Jenna. I am excited to be with you. And so, yeah, I mean, the intro is great, but just with a caveat, I people often ask me that if I work with a specific genre or if people have a certain type of book or whatever. And so, in general, I really don't specify a genre because people have ideas all over the map. And I'll give you an example. One client, she's kind of telling her story, but she's doing it through a contemporary fiction lens. And it's so powerful because she can just express different themes of her life through the characters. And her readers, I know, are going to be very much impacted by the story, even though it's fiction. And so what I do is I am not afraid to pull out the difficult aspects of the story that are emotional and that are challenging and that bring up all of those tears and struggles. And I walk with people through that journey and really inspire and help them to craft it in a way that they love and feel confident about on the page. So I focus on really the reader that will eventually be reading this book. And obviously I focus on the client and the person writing the book, but long game, we're thinking big, we're thinking impact. And so helping them feel just more comfortable, more safe, and more confident in sharing that story. And then beyond that, being able to reach and impact their reader, and ultimately beyond that, like their ideal client and everything, and building those relationships through their writing and through the book.
Yeah, I must say, for me, when I had that dream about writing my book, it seemed like such a faraway goal. And when I got approached by my coach about 2 years ago, I thought, "Yo, is this really possible for me to do this?" And I was very overwhelmed with the process and stuff. So it was supposed to take me 12 weeks, and it took me 2 years to finally write and publish my book. But it is such a rewarding process to go through. And I want to remind readers that are listening today that are thinking, I've got this dream to write a book, but it seems insurmountable. It is possible, especially when you've got someone like Katelyn that can walk you through it step by step. I think if you do it on your own, it would be a bit overwhelming. I think it would take a much longer if you had to do it on your own. But I think if you get a writing coach like Katelyn, then I think definitely you'll be able to reach that goal. So, Caitlin, tell us a bit about why you decided to start your own business.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll try to keep the backstory to a minimum so it's not all drawn out. Essentially, for me, I I've myself been through a lot of life challenges, and so one of those things is I lost my mom when I was little. I was 8, and I had several siblings, and I remember that my dad was always traveling, and so as I got older, I had really gotten into writing communities and writing my own stories and kind of sharing what I was going through my fiction stories as well. And one of the things that my mom had really instilled in me was a love of books and reading and writing and all of that. And she had actually taught me to read through writing, which was kind of different at the time. And so writing helped me really just heal and connect with her and I recognize that she's, with the Lord and whatever, but just feel more like a piece of her was still with me, and so I really needed that for a long time in my life. And so when I got older and I was in management and I was becoming a mom myself, and I was just realizing that I wanted to become an author and not put it off for years and look back with regret. And I finally did actually write and publish my own first books. I First of all, I had lots of people approaching me, asking me, how are you doing this? And I don't understand like how you're able to accomplish this with working and babies and everything else going on. Can you help me? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to help you. So I was kind of just meeting people for coffee chats and giving them tips and helping them stay accountable and just helping them for free. And then there was this day where my oldest son was turning 8, and I had been at work and he had some school event, and I wasn't able to go because I was at work. And I picked him up from school, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "Mama, you were the only one of the moms that wasn't there. Like, where were you? Why weren't you there? All the other kids' moms were there for this school event." And it just broke my heart. And he was almost turning 8, like I said, and so that was the same age I was when my mom died. And so it was just kind of this very crisis moment for me, where I thought, what if something happened to me and my son just remembered me working, and I never pursued the things that God has given me, the gifts that he's given me, and really having the change that I'm supposed to have in this world.
Yeah.
And so, God has really given me this vision and this dream. And I will say that there has been many times where I've tried to do it in my own way instead of God's way. And so I'll get into that later. But I decided, I'm gonna start this because I really want to have that impact for other people and help them to share their story and kind of vicariously impact the world through my client stories. And ultimately it comes down to doing what I felt like God was calling me to do. So.
Yeah. Well, that's lovely. That's wonderful. So how do you actually serve your clients differently from other people in your niche?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I recognize that in the process itself, it can be kind of similar to other offers. But what I like to focus on is really walking side by side through people and helping them feel very inspired and very just encouraged and guided through the process.
Yeah.
And I really deeply focus on, it's not, you're not, I'm not just coaching you on just writing. My focus is really helping you grow as a person and who you become through the journey of writing your book, and looking back and really understanding the journey and the process for yourself, so that you're equipped emotionally and mentally and also with the skills to be able to pursue other goals that you might have, or pursue other books that you might have, or whatever that looks like. And then with the publishing process, I also really focus with my clients on building foundation and setting them up for business success through the publishing process. And that's different than a lot of other publishing coaches, because they just focus on the actual publishing of the book versus setting up your back end, giving you some kind of lead magnet and book funnel, and like setting up the little pieces that are going to allow you to really turn it into a revenue stream and use the book as a business tool after the book launch. So.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that you actually work with your clients around like their whys and the stuff like that. And not just, you can see that it's a passion project for you. It's not mechanical process. It is, you want like them to have like that holistic experience with you as a coach, and to feel supported and stuff. Because I would say that doing it on your own, I wouldn't even try, because it was, for me, it was an overwhelming process even with a coach. um and but like I said, very rewarding. But it's very nice to have someone in your corner to call to say, listen, I'm stuck, I don't know what I need to do next. And even just to keep that motivation going. But because for me, I got stuck many times along that journey. And it was my coach who dragged me out of it and said, You can do this. You got this. Even when I didn't believe in myself, my coach believed in me. And I think that is very important, to have someone in your corner to keep you motivated, and to see the future you can have before you can see it. Because we all, we get stuck, and then we think it's possible for other people, but it's not possible for me. So yeah, I think that's very important. So what are some of the biggest lessons that life has taught you?
Yeah. Um, I think for me, the biggest one is knowing that I'm not alone and that
Mhm.
I can take everything to God in prayer and ask him for leading and guidance. That's not something I it's something that I kind of have gradually come into because I have struggled with trying to do it all my own, and it's I think for me it's been so humbling and freeing, knowing that I'm not alone and that I don't have to do it all by myself, and that I'm not responsible for every single thing and every single outcome, because that's just way too much.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it really
definitely.
is. So that's been really the biggest thing for me, is just stepping into that place of surrender and
Mhm.
being like, okay, I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to take the steps that I am being called to take, and I'm going to uh, kind of walk in faith that not all of my decisions are going to flop,
Yeah,
and then I'm gonna trust that the outcome is beyond my control in the best way possible. you know
yeah.
um I think for another big lesson for me is also learning how to rely on other people, and again, not obviously take it to God and everything too, but um it's important, I think, to know where my weaknesses are and know where I need to like trust someone else or give something to someone else, and kind of step out of it. For me, it's kind of hard sometimes. I'm not a perfectionist, but I have a passion for excellence, and so I'm like, oh, I have to do everything myself, and so learning to just trust other people and let them grow, let them learn, and help guide them through doing different things in their life as well, is also very rewarding, and has been a huge lesson for me to learn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's important things to know, is that you've always got God in your corner, and He's like that security net that keeps us all sane. I remember that time in COVID, like I discussed with Isabella in our interview as well. Um, there were many people who felt so hopeless, and for me as a Christian, it is so nice to know that God has got your back. And you just need to trust in him. And even though the process looks to you now like it's a mess, he's the ultimate artist, and he's busy with you, and you're an artwork. So sometimes we feel like, God, why it's so dark? I can't. And then he's just busy with some kind of piece of the shadow of your portrait. And he's still busy with you, and you just need to keep trusting him to bring you through it. And like that quote that says, when God brings you to it, he will bring you through it. And when he gives you a calling, he will give you grace to fulfill your calling. So definitely. And then,
mm,
yes, like you said, trusting people, and learning to delegate, not trying to do everything yourself. That is definitely important as well. All right. So, talk to us about what it means to be an overcomer, considering your own journey. I know I've read a little bit about your journey, and you can share just as much as you're comfortable with here. But I just found it fascinating that you were able to publish 11 books through this journey that you've been through in your life. And I commend you for it. I take my hat off to you, and you're a mother of you know a lot of children, and you're flying. And I just for me, it's like unfathomable that you're so successful, even though you've had so many adversities and so many things going on in your life. So tell us a bit about that.
yeah, thank you so much for saying that. It's definitely a learning journey, and
Hmm.
I think that the things that help me to overcome are, number one, really, like, I can't emphasize enough the importance for me of taking things to the Lord, because there have been moments in my life where I was really overwhelmed and I felt so burdened, and just I was going through something difficult, whether it be, you know, well, okay, so there was a time in my life where I was assaulted, or there was a time in my life where I had some family members that were just, it was, there was just a lot going on that was completely out of my control, and at the same time was really bad for everybody involved. And it was easy to just emotionally and psychologically be very burdened and
Mhm.
struggling, but when I took it to the Lord and I just said, Lord, I can't do this, um,
Mhm.
that's when He came in and just removed that burden, and just brought that peace, and it reminds me of the verse that where Jesus says, take my yoke because my burden is easy and my yoke is light. And He doesn't mean that life will always just be easy, but it means that He'll walk with you and He'll help carry that burden with you. And so, I have definitely had many of those moments in my life where the Lord just really took that burden on Himself and just gave me the peace to continue to walk through it. And so that was the biggest thing for me, is being able to do that. And then also just holding on and kind of keeping the vision of what I'm working toward has
Yeah.
been huge for me as well, because there's also moments where it gets hard and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, why am I not
Mhm.
getting the results that I want, and what, being like, am I even doing the right thing, and wanting to give up, and then having to take a step back and be like, no, what am I really trying to accomplish here, like what is my why? And then looking at my kids, or getting a sweet message from a client that's just like, thank you so much and this is just life changing for me, or even a friend that gives me an encouraging word, like, I'm just so inspired, and I love this and that you're doing, or whatever. And it's just like, okay, I have to just kind of get out of my own head and get that external perspective of, this is not just about me, it's about so much more than that. And keeping that in perspective, keeping that vision, really helps me to not give up and just keep going and keep taking one step at a time, not trying to do it all in one day, because, I think some people struggle with that. I know I struggle with that sometimes. I wish I could get everything done in just one day, but it's one step at a time, and remembering that it's not the goal, it's the journey. So,
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Not the goal, it's the journey. Yeah, for me, I think just that is very important because we can get so lost in it's going to be so much time still, or looking at our big goals, that seem so insurmountable to us. When we just take it one step at a time, and like you said, take that little packet of worry and just lay it down at Jesus' feet every morning. Um, Putting your big rocks in first, like doing your praise and worship in the morning before you get your day started. Because I found in my life that my day gets so busy quickly that that if I try to squeeze my time with the Lord in to my day, it doesn't work out. I just need to take the first hour of every day and then just spend that time with Him. And then my whole day, it's like it's more easy and it's just more, not insane, it's structured. So for me, that's important. And when I get overwhelmed as well, it's important for me to withdraw a little bit, spend some time with the Lord, just say, Lord, I'm overwhelmed right now. I don't know what to do. And not complaining to other people, but complaining and asking your questions to the Lord, because we're so quick to go and gossip to our friends and talk about our problems to towards family members and whatever. But how much time do we spend talking it through with the Lord and asking Him for wisdom? Because He says in the Bible that if you want wisdom, you can ask it, and I will freely give it to you. So we need to remember that. So
mm.
yeah. All right. How do you juggle your work-life balance? So how do you keep everything running smoothly?
Well, it's not always smooth, that's for sure. um, but it's definitely a good try. I think for me, it really comes down to making sure that I'm keeping track of my priorities
Mhm,
and being very intentional.
mhm,
So, not every day is the same. And so it's important for me to, you know, take a step back and not just be okay with when things go wrong, and go with the flow and be able to make the adjustments. And I know for some people they're very like everything has to be very structured and rigid, and like if something goes off track, it's like and then there's other people that are on the other end of the spectrum and they kind of just always go with the flow,
yeah,
and so sometimes they're like, oh, I wish I could get more things in. And so for me it's kind of a blend of both and kind of trying to be balanced in the middle of that. And
mhm,
so the day before, I take a few minutes in my notepad app in my phone. It doesn't take very long, and I just write in the big things I need to accomplish for the following day. If it's a doctor appointment or if the kids have some homeschool class or whatever it is, the biggest priorities get put down. And then I also give myself a little note of the additional things I'd like to accomplish, time allowing. Um, so once the big priorities are done, then I'm like, okay, I can tackle those things. And then the other thing is I try to be very conscious of where my time is going, because if
mhm.
I am not paying attention, I will sit down and scroll on social media for like 20 minutes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
why did I even open this app in the first place? Oh, yeah, I need to go message somebody. And so, like, if and it's very easy to do that, especially with our phones and everything being, I mean, a lot of people run their business from their phones, right? And so it's just, taking that moment of, okay, what am I doing? Like, where do I need to go? How can I stay focused to that and not let myself get distracted? Because I think that's one our biggest enemy nowadays is distractions.
Mhm.
And so just try to be more conscious of, okay, let me not get distracted and let me just focus on getting this done, and then let me put this away and put it down so that I don't, get sucked into some other rabbit hole. And so it's just, yeah, taking it one step at a time, being intentional, making sure I'm aware of my priorities, and then trying to be conscious of where I'm spending my time and those moments of when it does get sucked down and how I can pull myself back out and refocus on what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, yeah, wonderful. Structures and routines are very important. But like you said, always staying flexible, because for us who are like mompreneurs, we need to juggle a lot of things. And like you said, every day is definitely not the same. Every day you get thrown with a million things, and there's so many activities for the kids, and you need to schedule something for work, and then something happens or a child is sick, and you need to know how to juggle. You need to know how to balance your life. In that routine of yours, how do you make sure you make time for yourself and spend some time with yourself?
Yeah. So for me, earlier you kind of mentioned, that hour first thing in the morning. And
Mhm.
so I know there was a time in my life where at the end of the day, I could kind of stay up for an hour and, just spend that time with the Lord or doing some writing or whatever I wanted to do. And I found that as I've had more children, especially, I'm sure people have heard the baby in the background. So,
Yeah.
having a little one now and then a toddler and then my older ones, um, by the end of the day, I'm pretty exhausted, and I think for a lot of moms that's the case. By the end of the day, it's like I just want to go to sleep. And so for me, it is getting up a little bit earlier in the morning. Sometimes it is challenging, but if I found that if I just get up, and I don't lay there and kind of let myself go in and out of sleep, but I actually get out of the bed, and I go sit down at my kitchen table to do my Bible study or whatever that looks like, and I can even do some study for a little bit and spend that time in prayer. And then I usually have some time to do some writing or do something in my business before the kids get up. Or, sometimes my 3-year-old, she'll come and she'll sit in my lap, but she'll just kind of snuggle there a little bit, half
Yeah.
asleep. And so I can still get some things done.
Yeah.
And so just recognizing that when I don't get up, I lose that time is also kind of a motivator for me. It's like, okay, I need my me time. And then another thing that's helpful for me is in the afternoon, my two little ones usually take a nap, and my older
Mhm.
two have other activities that they're doing, like they're reading or they're practicing piano or they can go play outside or whatever. And so I try to coordinate that time so that all the kids are kind of occupied or
Occupied?
asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I get some more me time this afternoon, or I can work on something, or of course, I try to work in my like client calls and my business and stuff like that too during that time. But regardless, it's important to be, again, recognizing where I can create those time opportunities for myself and make the most of that time.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us a little bit about your published books. I know you're like, is it like a ghostwriter for some of the books and then 4 books that you've published, or how does that work?
No, actually, yeah. So that's a great question. I actually do ghostwriting, but I don't include those in the book count. So it would be more if I added those. So yeah, all 11 are books that I have personally written and published.
Okay,
So
wow.
most of those are under a pen name, and
Okay.
I write fantasy under a pen name, and then I've recently started writing some romance under a different pen name as well. And then under my name, I write nonfiction.
Okay.
So, so yeah. um, so, so if I get into it, I won't go into every single book, but if people want to check out the fantasy books, they're under my pen name is KL Dimago, and that's on, they can look it on Amazon or whatever. And then for my name, I wrote a book on management because I felt like that was kind of not really a passion project, but more of like I see a need in the industry, and this book it can fill that gap and do well, and it has. And so, and then I also wrote a book on time management and productivity because, so many people were asking me with kids and work, and how are you writing and publishing so many
Yeah,
books? So I was
I
like,
need to buy that book.
yeah. Let me put my method into something that people can take,
Yeah.
and I made it in a way that it's very short, and I did that on purpose because I want it to be something that people that don't have time
Yeah.
to read. So it's time
Yeah.
efficient, because I've noticed a lot of other productivity books are super long, and I'm like, that's
Don't have
great
time for this.
information, but here are the takeaways, like here's
Yeah.
the go and implement and you will have time kind of thing. So
Yeah.
that was that one, and it comes with an action guide and a planner, so people can really just get right into it and implement.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I wrote a book on my method of writing and publishing. So it walks through the steps of, okay, do this first, get clarity, and then, and here's the steps. And so those are very just practical. Here's what you need to do, fill the gap of a need, and help people get to a result, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, under the pen name, the fantasy stuff just explores all kinds of fun, adventurous aspects of writing a lot more.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, why did you decide to write under pen names, if I may ask? Because I know some aspiring authors are toying with the idea of, should I write under my name? Should I write under a pen name? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, I will say that I never tell someone else whether they should or shouldn't write under a pen name. It's always a very personal decision. But with that, for me, I knew I wanted to write a different range of genres. I knew I wanted to write fantasy, and I wanted to write nonfiction, and I wanted to eventually pursue some other categories like Christian romance and stuff like that. And so for me, it was like, do I really want to have them all under one name? And I was like, the thing is that when you're writing, you need to have your reader in mind. It's very similar to when you're in business and you need to have your ideal client in mind when you're creating content. And so with a reader, you really want to have one specific type of person. And obviously, we all enjoy multiple different types of books. But someone who enjoys reading, epic fantasy with dragons and sword and sorcery and adventure may not always enjoy reading like the cozy romance novels, So it's important to recognize that. And so for me, I thought, okay, I'm going to have a pen name because I can build my audience and my readers that specifically like my fantasy under that for marketability. And then I'll have a different pen name for the romance that's a different reader audience, right? And then I'll have my name for my nonfiction because I'm tying it to my business. And so it's tied to my name and my brand. And so that's kind of a necessity. So it's really more about understanding your reader and the audience that you're trying to build, and making that decision accordingly. And I know for some people, they want to write a pen name because they're writing a memoir, or they're writing something that's a lot more personal and detailed about aspects of their life, and they're worried about people that they know reading it and identifying them as a person. And what I want to encourage people is in two aspects. A pen name can definitely make you feel more comfortable and confident in just sharing what you want to say and just getting it on the page without fear of other people reading it. And then the second thing is that whenever you have ever read a story that has that, they usually have those disclaimers at the beginning that say, names and places have been changed to protect the privacy of the people, and any semblances to people is coincidental, and all that. And I think it's important for people to include those disclaimers, because again, it adds that element of comfortability and safety, and just feeling like you can share the story that you need to tell, because it is your story. No one can tell you, oh, you didn't experience that. It's your story. So it's important to feel like you can share what you need to say and not feel like you're being silenced even on the page.
Yeah. Well, that's a great tip, to have that like disclaimer paragraph in your book if you want to write something that may ruffle some feathers. I know my book did ruffle a few feathers, and I didn't have like a disclaimer like that. But I actually did talk about my childhood, and I know it upset some of the people that that are in my story. So not that I like purposefully went and wanted to make someone look bad or anything, but like you said, that was my story, and that's the way I perceived it. And someone can come and confront me and say, but that's not what happened, or that's not how it happened. But for me, it was. That is the way that I perceived it. That is the way that the situations happened in my life, and how, the way I perceived it. So, and I had that moment where I thought by myself, if they wanted me to write warmly about me, they should have treated me differently. But like I said, I definitely had to write and rewrite some of this stuff, because I deliberately tried not to, like, that wasn't the purpose of my book, to expose and hurt people. It was a book, my book is about finding yourself again, and it explains my journey of finding myself again. And it was necessary for me to tell the stories to set the reader up to understand the message. So yeah, for me, I definitely had to go through a piece of that. So in your spare time, Katelyn, or in your research, do you like reading?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of the number one things I do when I'm not writing my own stories.
Yeah. So what do you like reading?
So, uh, for me, I like reading pretty much anything that captures my attention. So
Okay.
I read everything from, Western stories to high fantasy to romance novels to, business books to Christian literature. It's all over the map. Uh,
Yeah. Like,
the only exception is I avoid horror with a passion. And
okay.
I also avoid erotica because it,
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't go there.
Yeah.
But other than that, pretty much everything's on the table for me.
Okay. Okay. So could you give us like a 3 book reading list that you would recommend?
Yeah, I have to admit that picking just three is really hard.
It
But I'll
is.
list
I
a
know.
couple that are kind of my top favorites. I
Okay.
really enjoy pretty much anything by C.S. Lewis, but I think pretty much everyone should read Mere Christianity. It's
Okay.
it's such a meaty and rich book from him on Christianity and why we know it's true, and how to have confidence in your faith and how to talk about it with other people and all that kind of stuff. So it's really great. I think I really love Tamora Pierce. She was one of the authors that inspired me when I was growing up. And
Mhm.
my favorite book from her is called Trickster's Choice. It's like two books. It's Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen, but we'll count it as one because they go together. Yeah. So, always have to include those. And then for book number 3, um, okay, this is going to sound so cliche, but I really love fantasy novels, And so I'm going to have to throw the Lord of the Rings on there,
Okay.
because it's just so good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I must confess, with the movies of the Lord of the Rings, my husband is like a prolific, like what do you like sci-fi and stuff like that. He
Oh,
loves watching movies like that. I'm just totally not into it. So he's been trying to get me to watch the Lord of the Rings like I think 5 times or something, and then I get to a point where I just cannot watch anymore. It's just I just the storyline isn't for me. It has to be like a psychological something that I need to keep thinking and stuff, and then it just I cannot. And even like stuff like Harry Potter, my husband also loved Harry Potter and wanted me to watch it, but I just couldn't get myself to to watch it. So
yeah,
definitely different strokes for different folks.
absolutely. I agree with you. And that's the point too, is with knowing your reader, is because, like you said, different people like different things, and something is going to resonate with someone, and it's not going to resonate for someone else. And and that's actually a reason why, for any of our listeners that are thinking of writing a book, but they are like, I don't know, I would say your every person's story and perspective 100% absolutely is necessary and matters,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
you as the writer have the power and the unique voice and story that will impact somebody else in a way that nobody else can, right? And
definitely.
you're going to say it in a way that impacts and resonates for your ideal readers, and
Mhm.
they may have read a million other books on that topic, and for some reason the way that you shared the story, it finally clicks for them. So
Yeah,
I mean, if you're hesitating for whatever reason,
yeah,
now is the time. Do
yeah,
it.
yeah. Yeah, someone out there needs you to write the book. So
Yeah.
definitely pursue that goal. Get into contact with Caitlin and get to writing that book, even if it takes you a while. I mean, I really when I've written down that I want to write a book, I thought it's going to be like 10 years now. And then when my book coach contacted me 2 years ago, I'm like, oh my soul, can I do this? And then now 2 years later, the book is published. Now I feel so relieved and accomplished because I did it, and I thought it would be much harder than it actually was. It was very hard, but it's not that hard that it's not accomplishable. It is truly I don't know. It's a moment of legacy and a moment of being proud of yourself because you know there's something, a little piece of you that's going to stay on this earth even if you're not here. I always think about my girls. I've got 3 daughters, and I'd love for them to know what I know, and that's one of the reasons why I write. Is for me, it's important for them to learn the lessons so they don't have to repeat my mistakes. Even though they're just still little now and they're not really interested. I know that someday when I'm gone, they will appreciate it and they will be able to go back. And even talking about legacy, even your grandkids and stuff will be able to Google you and find something about you online that you'd never think about, you know. And I think that is nice just to have a piece of you, like a little legacy for your kids and your grandkids one day online, and that they can like treasure and enjoy. So
Mm, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So Caitlin, what are some quick action steps that our listeners can take to get a win? So if they've got this dream of writing a book, or if they're already busy writing, they've got a little manuscript and they're toying with it and they don't really know what the next steps are, what would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, my go to advice for anyone that's especially during the writing process is, first of all, it's important to get absolute clarity on your content. And that doesn't mean that you're clear on every single piece of the story. It just means that you're clear on the overall flow and direction that the story is going. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, one of the biggest mistakes I see is that writers just jump right in and go for it and end
Mhm,
up getting stuck,
mhm,
or they're constantly jumping out and doing research or shifting the direction or being like, oh, maybe I can go this way or that way. And they'll end up with multiple different versions of the story over like 10 years, and then they're like, now what do I do, you know? So what I would say is, for anyone listening that's in this position, give yourself like 15 to 30 minutes and take a mental step back from all of the content that's jumbled around in your head, and get, always do it with pen and paper. Don't try to type it, but get, a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and just kind of do a brain dump exercise where you write down the overall theme or overall story idea in the middle, and then you just flow around it and write down everything else that's popping up in your head. And it doesn't have to be full length sentences, it's just words or phrases that help you remember that specific aspect of the story. So whether it's fiction or nonfiction, and you just keep writing until nothing really else is coming up in your brain. And you also don't ever discount something. So if something pops up and you're thinking, I don't really need that in the story, don't do that quite yet. Just write everything down, because your brain wants to use it somehow. And once you get to the end of this exercise and nothing else is really coming up related to that story, then take that huge mass of stuff on the page and organize it into related groups. So, there might be different groups that are kind of similar in category. So it might be a chapter, or their scenes or character arcs or whatever. And so just kind of organize them, especially if it's nonfiction. It's a little easier to just group things together. With fiction, it's going to be more of understanding what needs to happen to connect the pieces together to get the character through these different aspects of the journey, and whatever. So that'll kind of develop over time. But then once you have that kind of organized, you're going to put it together into a flow that will guide you through the manuscript from beginning to end. And so it doesn't have to be an outline. You could literally get a poster board and draw it like a huge map if you want to, or you could do colorful Post-it notes all over your wall, or you could do fun indexed cards, or whatever works for people is great. They can be creative with it. They can be super simple and do an outline, whatever. But I call it a roadmap because it should be designed to take them from the beginning to the end in a kind of a way that they can stop what they're doing at any point and then come back to their story, and they know where they left off, they know where they're going, and they can not spend as much time trying to remember, oh wait, I need to figure out where I'm going again. So it helps them not get stuck. It'll help them not get stuck and just be able to continue making progress and getting words on the page. So
yeah. Well, I think that's great advice. When I started writing my book, I had a similar thing where I just took a big piece of paper and then just dumped everything on it, and then I took this little sticky notes that looks like a point. I don't know, my English is terrible. And then I've written down like all the main things on that little sticky notes, and then I just on a big poster, I tried to organize where does this thing go and this thing go, and until I was happy with where everything went and stuff. And then from there I was able to know, okay, this is chapter 1, this is how many chapters my book's going to have. And it really truly it's like the backbone of your book. It keeps you sane, it keeps you knowing what's next, what you need to, and where you need to find gaps and when you need to make bridges. So it definitely is a great tip for even if you've already got some kind of manuscript going, do that, because for you to keep reading that manuscript over and over to know where you are. I know when I first started out, the first 3 months I struggled, and I did have that backbone, but I couldn't remember what I've finished and what I haven't finished, because I was set to write this 80,000 word book, my very first book. And I don't know why I wanted to write 80,000 words, but I think it's just like I wanted to be an overachiever. And my coach kept telling me that for a first book, that's a bit much, And I said, no, I can do this. And I just got so overwhelmed with the process. And for me, I didn't even know basic stuff like that. Word has a navigation panel that I can use to to separate my chapters and stuff. So I just read through the whole manuscript, and then I had to go back again, and it was just completely overwhelming.
Mm.
And that roadmap at the end of the day saved me, because then I got back into it and was able to finally complete it. So definitely a great tip. So Caitlin, describe to us, who is your ideal client? Who are the people that you love to work with?
Yeah, that's also a great question. So I would say for me, my ideal client is the the mompreneur who is a Christian, who has, little ones that are at home, or even older kids, and she's working on her business, and she's taking care of mom responsibilities, but she has this book idea that she's had for a very long time, and she knows that by telling that story, that it will have impact, that it will make a difference in someone's life, and ultimately that it will fulfill a part of her that knows that, like, it's part of her calling and what she's supposed to be doing. And so she's really struggled with it for a long time, like I said, and she's just feeling like she's every time she tries to write, it's not coming out. She can't get it to flow the way she wants it to. She's not sure how to bring the content together in a way that makes sense. And so she's in a place where she's like, okay, if I could just figure out how to tell the story and impact people through the book, and you know understand my roadmap, and um, you know feel confident in what I'm writing, because she's also struggling with that, where she's reading other books and she's like, I wish my writing looked like that, and she's has that disconnect of not realizing that her writing is going to look like that. It takes the process, it takes time. So she's in that place where she knows that this book is important and it matters, but she just isn't sure how to quite cross that finish line with it.
Okay. Okay, so if you're that busy mom, and you have that dream to write that book, or you've already started and you've got that dream, you need to definitely get a hold of Caitlin. Definitely reach out to her, and even if you just have a conversation with her about next steps and what you can do, I know that Caitlin will be able to help you. So, Caitlin, on that note, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, number one, I have several free resources on my website at rewritebooks.com. So, if anybody wants to go there, they can go to the resources, and there's a plethora of things that people can choose what works best for them, depending on where they are in the journey. And if someone does want to have a more personal conversation about, you know, hey, let's craft that roadmap. Let's help you get clear. Let's help you feel like you have a step by step to get from where you are to where you want to be. I do offer bestseller assessments for people to just have that conversation. And it's no catch, no obligation. If we want to have a conversation working together, then great. But otherwise, it's just an opportunity to get a more one-to-one input on your story and help you get from that step by step that you need. So if people want to take advantage of that, they can go to wewritebooks.com/bestseller assessment, and that's also a link on the website. So pretty much everything is on the website.
On the website. Wow, that's fantastic. So definitely get yourself an appointment with Caitlin. Talk with her through your book idea or through your manuscript that you already have. Let her help you with some next steps and some processes, so that you can finally publish your book and maybe get it to bestseller status. I mean, there's nothing in the world that speaks for you, that's like, if you're an entrepreneur, that gives you that authority, like saying that you've got a bestseller published book on Amazon. And it's also for me, like, my book is like a business card, so I use it to show my clients what I offer, because there's a lot of resources in my book as well that they can just go and grab. And even though it's a very useful book with all of the steps they can take, you can also include all of your resources in your book, and it can be like an extended business card, and you can use it to increase that know, like, and trust for your clients if you are writing nonfiction. So I really encourage you, Katelyn. Thanks so much for spending your time with us, and for giving us some very helpful tips and things to look for and to look out for on our journey to becoming authors. And thank you for just for being here with us and for giving us hope, because I know a lot of us has got that dream, but we feeling like maybe not me, maybe I wouldn't be able to do that. And I know that if you work with Katelyn, she will be able to keep you motivated, keep you hopeful, and then just do it. Don't procrastinate. If you're listening to this recording on the replay, contact Katelyn. Don't let a day go by. Just do it, and you won't be disappointed. All right. Thanks so very much, Katelyn.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jana.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, my readers. I hope you have a lovely day, and we'll talk again. Bye bye.